Hello, Robert Fulton here, and welcome. It's going to settle in for a moment and let people check in. All right. So, good morning. And we're just waiting just a little bit as people start to sign in a little so we don't have to repeat too much. But I'll begin in just a moment. And welcome. Starting to see people. Hello. Good to see you. All right. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started here as people continue to sign in. And first of all, welcome again. If I haven't met you, I'm Robert Fulton, and this is what we call a yoga talk, and it's being hosted by Antwerp Yoga. So thank you for Antwerp Yoga for helping out on this. And the capacity that I'll be here today is I'm involved with the teacher training at Antwerp Yoga, and so we talk about these kind of things all the time in our yoga teacher training. But it's nice to maybe share it with the larger community as well, because I know that some of these questions are going on in people's minds. And today's topic, which we will get to in a little bit, is the Kleshas. The Kleshas are something from the Yoga Sutras, but if you've never heard of those, don't worry, we're going to get there slowly, bit by bit. And the kleshas are something that we're going to look at as to how they affect our lives, and especially in times like this when our lives are definitely affected by kleshas. But then not just leave it at that, but what do we do next? Like, how do we use this knowledge of what kleshas are to go further and to actually start dealing with some of the issues that are coming up in our lives? So that is the topic for today, but there'll be many things we're going to look at. And I do want to get started, just a couple things. Not used to this completely, and that's not an excuse. I'm just saying this is a different type of teaching because I do like the give and take. I think this is a very strange way sometimes, is because it's just me talking. So what I'm going to try to do is just keep an eye on some comments in the side every now and then. And if I see a question pop up, then I'll try to take it if it's a relevant question that fits in. So one of the things that happened in teaching or talking, this is yoga talk, I'm not teaching at you, joining with you, is that I was surprised to see this. I have one of my own now. So that is interesting because you get these little bubbles coming up, and I felt that this one was very interesting because it's very cowardly. And so what I have as a little ground rule, so if you decide to, do one of these, then what I'm going to ask you to do at home is to go arg like a pirate. Okay, so if you punch this one, it's arg. All right, you can't just do it because otherwise it's very cowardly. Otherwise, welcome again. And as said, I will be looking at the sidebar. Okay, so Atta Yogana Shasanam. Atta Yogana Shasanam. So we said that last time. Atta Yogana Shasanam. Atta is now. This is the first sutra. Atta, now, Yogana Shasanam. Now is the time for the instruction or for the study of yoga. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. But not just the sutras. We're going to build up to that as well. And at certain points, I may be asking you to think about some questions. And then, like I said, if I find a question, I'll add to that. So what to expect? This will be a little background on the Yoga Sutras, how we get to the Kleshas, but then again, practical information. Like, how do we use it? Because if we just read all these books and we talk about it, blah, 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 and we don't use it, then really, what's the point? There is no point. It's just a lot of empty knowledge. That's not true knowledge. That's just book knowledge. Integration, the samadhi is the integration of that knowledge, and that's what we're really looking for. is how do we integrate this into our lives. So, the Kleshas in the Yoga Sutras, but let's back up a little bit to get to that. So we need to go backwards in time. So the Yoga Sutras, more or less, and this is a big more or less because we don't know for sure, around 300 BCE to 200 CE. So there's about a 500-year period when the Yoga Sutras may have been composed. But they didn't just pop out of nowhere. They came from a lineage, from a tradition of philosophy and thinking and questioning. One of the main ones that we will look at just briefly is the Upanishads. And Upanishads are these texts, and they can be dialogues, they can be song, they can be little prose paragraphs, they can be hymns. There are a lot of different ways to do Upanishads. But Upanishad meant to come up and sit down like we're doing here, and to talk and to exchange ideas about the big questions of life. And that's what we're going to be doing. So we have, this is another one that I had last time, the big questions. This is actually from my college graduation, 1991. Thank you. And so we're going to be asking these big questions and then how to deal with them. So the Upanishads ask these questions. And last time I mentioned that one of the first times we hear about yoga is in the Bhagavad Gita. But actually it's a little bit before that in the Katha Upanishad. And the Katha Upanishad is a very short little text, and it's about the travels and travails of this teenager, Nakicita. Now Nakicita, we can imagine that he was in self-quarantine with his dad, and his dad was trying to work, and he was doing his daily hymns and rituals, and Nakicita kept asking him, okay, Dad, you send all these prayers to the gods, but who do you send me to? Whom do you send me to? And his dad goes, to hell with you, to Yama. Yikes. Cut to black, fade to black. Next scene, Nakicita's in the underworld with Yama. Nakicita's a very clever boy, and so he has this dialogue with death. And ultimately, death, Yama, says, all right, you know what? You passed the test. I'm going to give you another chance. And he says, do yoga. And that's it. We don't even know what that meant. It's just do yoga. And he says that yoga is the beginning and the end, the prabhava and the apyaya. The beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. And it's not about physical. It's about apramada, like clearing the mind. We still don't know what it means. And so Nakicita goes back and he gets to live again. He gets another chance to live. And that's really what yoga is doing, is giving us another chance to live, because, to quote a teenage son of a friend of mine, this is life. Hashtag cool Beck. So this is life. This is not a dress rehearsal. And yoga is going to give us those tools about how to deal with this life when it becomes challenging, for example. So Nachikita goes on and he's going to do yoga. But again, we don't know exactly what that is. Yoga starts to develop a little bit more than when we do get to the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is considered an Upanishad. And in this Upanishad, there's a conversation, a dialogue between Krishna, who is literally the universe embodied as a man, a charioteer for the horses, and Arjuna. And he's a warrior. And there's a big war. And it's a civil war, so it's families against families. And Arjuna is one of the princes in this family. And he looks to the right, he looks to the left, and he's like, I can't do this. I give up. He literally has a mental breakdown on the battlefield. Starts crying, his knees go weak, and he just loses it. Oh, wait, you have to do this. Arrgh, arrgh. Somebody did one of these. Arrgh. Okay, so you have this battlefield, Krishna and Arjuna. And Arjuna says, I can't do it, I can't go on. And Krishna, the embodiment of God and love and light, doesn't give him a big hug and say, it's okay. He actually says, be a man, get up, stand up, Don't forget to fight. He basically sings Bob Marley to him. So he does. He gets up and he says, okay, come on, get up. You can't just sit there and then go, oh, I can't go on. And he does have this mental breakdown. But Krishna's advice is get up and guess what? Do yoga. In fact, he says, Tasmat sarvani bhutani tvam na shotitam arhasi. He says, because of that, because you're here crying, you need to get up. Sorry, I keep getting this pop-up. That you're not worthy of grieving for all beings because you haven't done the work. So don't sit on that battlefield crying for yourself, going, why me, boo-hoo. It's like saying, this is life. Guess what? Wake up. Wake up, Arjuna. Get up, stand up, and don't forget to fight. And that's literally what he says to them. And then he starts telling them about what yoga is. And then we learn more about what yoga is. And from the Gita, we do get 3 types. We get the karma yoga, which is action. Karma yoga is literally the yoga of action. So at 8 o'clock, when people are outside clapping out their windows, they're clapping for the karma yogis, the people that are doing the work, that are on the ground, that are working. That's karma yoga. That's one way. And Krishna realizes not everybody can work in the hospital. Not everyone can pick up the trash. Not everyone can work in the grocery store. So not everyone can do karma. There are small things we can do, but then there's bigger things. But then there's others, maybe jnana yoga. That's the yoga of the mind. That's when we start to go deeper, go within, and then find out some of these bigger questions and then maybe help others with that. But first, we need to figure some things out for ourselves. And then ultimately we have Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the one that becomes most popular from the Gita, and that's the yoga of devotion. And this is where you sort of get the yoga of love and light. And it's sort of the love and light for Krishna. But that's not the only type of yoga. There are other ones. It's karma yoga. So if there is action to be done, it has to be done. And so that's Krishna's message as well to Arjuna. Get up, stand up, don't forget to fight, and act. And how do you act? According to your dharma. Now, dharma is a big word. This could be considered a dharma talk. Now, dharma is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, and it literally means that which you carry along. Now, it can be law, it can be what you ought to do, or it can be your life's purpose, but each person has an individual dharma, and then there's sort of the wheel of dharma of the universe as well. And if we start neglecting our individual dharma, then it starts breaking down bit by bit. And Krishna says, if you don't act, then I don't have to act, and I'm the universe. And if I don't act, well, guess what? We're in a heap of trouble. So he says, get up. And so that's where we are with yoga from the Gita, is get up. Wake up. WTFU. Wake up. So when we wake up, okay, well, what are we waking up to? Are we waking up from sleep? Are we waking up from what? So we'll go a little bit further with that in a moment. Need to add a little bit more element before we get to the actual Yoga Sutras, and that comes from Buddhism. So Buddha, if you may know from the story, from the Janakas, from the life stories. So the Buddha was born into a wealthy family, and he was hidden from reality. And so he didn't know what was going on around. So his dad wanted him to be a great king and a great leader because there was this prophecy. And so he had this prophecy that he was going to become a great king. And so his dad did everything he could to keep Buddha in line and away from the world. And so Buddha once, maybe he had a YouTube account, and he thought it would be a good idea to sing Imagine from this big palace and say, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with your pain. Imagine. Really? That was our Marie Antoinette moment, by the way. 2020, Marie Antoinette. Let 'em eat cake. Thank you very much for that one. So he's in his palace, sends out his YouTube, but then he actually goes out, and he goes out onto, let's say he was living in Malibu, and he goes out to Sunset Strip and realizes, hang on, there's people living on the streets in cars and dying and sick, and he wasn't living in reality. And then that's when his awakening comes about. So that is the Buddha's awakening. And then from there, he realizes, okay, everything can be suffering, but suffering can be overcome. And he gives us what is called the Arya Ashtanga Marga. And that means the noble path, 8-limb path. Sound familiar for those of you who know some yoga? There is an 8-fold path that comes before that through Buddhism. And it's all going towards trying to deal with this word right here, dukkha, suffering. Suffering. Because the Buddha, when he was living up in his palace, was like, whoa, okay, everything's groovy. Goes out on the street, sees a completely different reality, and that's when he has his beginning of his awakening. There's different stages. That's the beginning of it. That's when he realizes, okay, need to make some changes. So he had a little bit of a wake-up call, as we can say. And so maybe some of us had that. And there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of shaming and a lot of, you need to do this and you need to do that. Let's be a little nicer on that one, people. But anyway, so maybe we did come up with, oh, okay, this is my chance to go within, and I'm going to learn some new languages. I'm going to study yoga. I'm going to, who knows, learn how to paint. That happens in the first few days. Then things kind of change a little. So, somebody else anticipated this. I'm going to read from a very prominent philosopher. Yeah, I don't really, that's just a prop. Don't need the glasses. So, Dr. Seuss. Oh, the places you can go. So just a bit of it. So you can get so confused that you'll start in to race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, towards a most useless place. The waiting place. Ooh, the waiting place. This is the waiting place. We're waiting. What are we waiting for? For people just waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes or a no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for a wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night. Or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everyone is just waiting. No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape in that waiting and staying, and you'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing. All right. Where are those boom bands? Swadhyaya, self-study. Looking outwards for those boom bands ain't going to help. It's temporary. It may make you feel better for a little bit. The Kleshas, as we're going to see, is first taking care of what's going on inside. Then we find the boom bands that can bring the santosha, or maybe the big word moksha, or release, or freedom from this dukkha. So, how can we do that? Not like that. It's not just a snap the fingers. It does take work. And it takes a little bit of effort. And it takes some frustration. And it's not always pretty. But it is possible. And so with the Yoga Sutras, the more, and it doesn't have to be the Yoga Sutras. There's many ways. Marga, the Eightfold Path. Marga is a path in Sanskrit. There's many paths. So this just happens to be the yoga path now that we're talking about. There are many paths. So let's go further with what that path that we're on with the yoga, if we have chosen that. What do we do with that? So Atta Yogana Shasanam. Now is the time to really start studying yoga. So maybe you've been doing yoga, you've been doing some asanas and some sun salutations. And I love asana, I teach asana, I'm not mocking it. I love that as well, but it's part of it. The other part is going to be that figuring out how the kleshas are working. So again, we're getting there step by step. So we have the Upanishads, we have yoga starting to come into the picture, then we have the Gita where we get these different types of yoga. And now we're going to start getting this little bit of a guidebook or a manual. And that's really what the Yoga Sutras become. It's more of a manual about how to deal with some of these bigger questions. Because they are the big questions. How does it begin? The Yoga Sutras talks about the vrittis. Now there's going to be 3 types of obstacles. Vrittis, antarayas, and kleshas. And we'll get to each one of them. And we'll land on the kleshas. But we need to talk about the first 2 first. So the vrittis, as you may remember from last time, or if you're just joining us on this one, vritti, yogas chitti, vritti nirodha. Yoga is the calming of the fluctuations, the turnings of the mind. And that's when we begin to find our true nature, swarupa. Swarupa is our true nature. So vritti, you can say, well, what is vritti? Vritti comes into our modern languages as vert, like introvert and extrovert, because those words are getting a lot of mileage lately. And so the extroverts are sending out videos from palaces, and the introverts are going, whoa, I've been preparing this for a while. But it's still not easy. It's not easy for anybody. And so there's the vrittis are these turnings of the mind, and that's what kind of gets us a little frazzled. And so yoga is there to help calm that. And then how can we calm that? And then Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras goes on to say, okay, there's different ways. One of them is by chanting Om, for example. Because Om is the ultimate mantra. Om is the vibrations of the universe. Om connects us with the physical and the metaphysical. And that's one way. There are many paths, so, in yoga. And so we can be going along and we can be chanting Om and we can be doing a great yoga practice and we can be doing our 10,000 sun salutations, Surya Namaskars. And then reality. And it's how we respond when that reality hits is really the message of yoga. So we can have all these wonderful intentions, the samkalpa is the intention, but it's really when the foot falls, how are we going to use our yoga? That's the second obstacle. Those are the antarayas, and that's in the first book of the Yoga Sutras. And they are, now antaraya, you can translate it a couple different ways. It can be pulling away from the self, or it can be turning into the self. But either way, they're distractions about your daily yoga practice, whatever your yoga practice is. Whether it's a physical asana practice, or whether it is a more interior jnana, or if it's bhakti. Whatever it is, we get these obstacles. And these are daily. So what can they be? They can be sloth, they can be illness, they can be distraction, or lack of focus. There's a few others, but you get the point. These things happen to all of us every single day. So we get distracted, we get sick, somebody around us gets sick, we're tired. Those are the antaryayas, and they take us out of our yoga practice. And again, it's sort of jolting. So we got to get back. How do we get back? The next part of the Yoga Sutras says, well, from samadhi. But here's a spoiler alert. The first part of the Yoga Sutras talks about samadhi, but that's really the end process. So it gives us the end of the movie at the beginning. Like I like to say to our teacher training group, it's like a Tarantino movie. We have samadhi at the beginning, but we don't really know what samadhi is. Samadhi, though, we find out, is the 8th limb of the Yoga Sutras, the 8th Ashtanga. Samadhi then means to integrate this knowledge, but we still haven't got the knowledge because we still don't even know what we don't know yet. Because we can just say, well, I don't know, but we don't even know what we don't know. So that's going to be the next step, and that's really when we're going to get into Kleshas. So we're almost there. Almost there. So again, so we have the vrittis, that's sort of the turning of the mind. And that can be klishta and aklishta. That means it can be beneficial and harmful. So sometimes our distractions in the mind are actually helpful. And then sometimes they can be harmful. And then the antarayas are external. They're external. So we have the internal fluctuations of the mind, the external, things that are out of our control, things that we can have no control over. And then there are some things that we do have some sort of, and control is a strange word, he doesn't really use control, some sort of management over, some sort of response to instead of reacting. And again, those are going to be the kleshas. So, what are they? Comes up in book 2. So once again, the goal of yoga is to calm the mind. Then the antarayas distract us, such as naki chiquita. Say that 5 times fast. When he bugs his father, and his father says, "Oh, to hell with you," and literally he goes to hell, as we saw at the beginning. So those can be the external distractions. And then we have the big ones. And this is where our suffering comes from, according to yoga. Again, this is yoga today. Where does our suffering come from? Where does the dukkam come from? From the kleshas. Here we are. Now there's 5 kleshas. 5 kleshas. First one is avidya. Avidya is ignorance, the not knowing, so the lack of knowledge, the absence of knowledge. And that's the big one. It is the kshetra, it is the ground, it is the field in which all the other kleshas are rooted into. And so the avidya is the driving factor. But what are the others? It's like a cascading down. So if we have avidya, then the others start to follow. So we'll leave that one for a moment. Just briefly, as we talked last time, the main avidya, the main ignorance is, again, of the self. Of the self. So who am I when everything goes to hell? Such as Nakichita. Well, he keeps his head about him and he gets another chance. He's not panicking and freaking out and aparigraha, not taking more than we need. That's not what he does. This is a teenager. You know, I've seen a lot more wisdom lately, to be honest, from some teenagers, including my daughter and some others. Just to throw that out there. The adults, not so much. So, avidya, this ignorance of the self. And then the next level is asmita. Now, asmita is a lot of times translated as ego-ness. And then it's like, ooh, ego, ego, ego. No, wrong. Sorry. That's when I go, arg. Asmita is when we separate ourselves from the big picture. It's when we forget that connection with the bigger picture. And we start to say things like, this is mine. And, there we go. Say it, you have to say, arg. This is mine, or I did this. Separating ourselves from the bigger picture. So I didn't do the Yoga Sutras. I'm just talking about the Yoga Sutras. I didn't write them. I'm just looking at them. I did not do them. So for me to take any credit for anything I'm saying today would be asmita. Because this was through a process of studying over 25 years, but it's still from external sources. So asmita would be me taking credit for that, which I'm not. It's also saying, why me, why us? Which we're hearing a lot of. If that's really the question, we haven't been paying attention. So asmita is that complete disjunct between ourselves being part of the bigger whole. That's really what asmita is. It's not about ego as in the sense of I. It is in the sense of separation from the bigger picture. Then the next one, once we start looking at the world from our own perspective and we think this is it, then raga is the next one. Raga is intense passion for something. Like you really, really like it. Like I really, really like pumpkin pie, for example. Pumpkin pie. So I really love pumpkin pie. But what if I can't have it? Then I have to deal with, okay, I don't have that at this moment. But if I become obsessed with that, and it starts to affect everything I do, then that's raga. That's when the passion overtakes reason. Now, passions is not saying passion's bad. It's when it overtakes and consumes your life. This is the beginnings of addictions, for example. It's when something overtakes everything else. Because at one point it makes you feel good, and then it becomes bigger. That's raga. That's number 3. Then 4 is dvesha. Dvesha is more or less the opposite. So raga is like really pulling you in, and you just can't have enough, and it consumes you in that way. Dvesha is like, no thanks. And it's not in the Yoga Sutras, but there's one exception to dvesha, and that's Brussels sprouts. Okay, so dvesha is this strong aversion to something, and that you ultimately start missing out on life because you just begin to become hands off to everything. Dvesha. And so that's pushing away from you like the Brussels sprouts. So it's pushing away, all right? And so that can also totally disrupt our reality or how we're dealing with things. And so avidya is this ignorance. That ignorance leads to us thinking that we're separate from the bigger picture. When we think that we're separate from the bigger picture, then we can have too much passion for something. And again, it becomes an obsession. It's not just passion. I mean, it transcends the line of love to obsession. And then there's no love in obsession. So it changes, it morphs into something else. Dvesha, on the other hand, is an absurd hands off. Both of them ultimately shut you out. And then it feeds on each other. You see that? So the more raga or the more dvesha, then the more the asmita, the ego-ness grows, and then the more the ignorance grows. Then we get to the last one, and the last one's the tricky one. Abhinivesha. And this one's bugged me a lot. And I've looked in many different translations. I'm working on my own translation of the Yoga Sutras. And I'm extremely fortunate to have one of the most amazing mentors in my life was Patrick Olivelle. And I asked him, and he sent me to some other specialists. And this word is tricky, abhinivesha. In the Yoga Sutra tradition, it is translated as fear of death. Now you can see why I'm going with this one. But it can also mean clinging to life. But actually, neither one. It doesn't mean either one. It has become to mean those. It has been interpreted to mean that in the Yoga Sutras. But ultimately, it does go back further. And the word itself means more to really dwell in something. Overly dwell. Dwell means to live. But not just live, but like really dig into, a survival bunker underground. That would be abhinivesha. So digging yourself into the ground, literally, and that becomes your life. And so abhinivesha then becomes this, it's not necessarily raga, but it is this over-dependency on a certain type of life. So that when life changes, the bottom falls out. Because that's the only thing that you know is this like, okay, abhinivesha, I'm dwelling in this type of life. Well, guess what? On March 13th in Belgium, the bottom fell out in a lot of ways of a certain type of life. Now, if you see that, on that side, that's my New Mexico flag. Yeah, I was supposed to be in New Mexico soon for a very dear trip that I've been looking forward to. Not going to happen. So yeah, there are certain things in my life, and we're all affected, and there's more than that. I'm not singing Imagine for you. I'm just saying we have all been impacted. All of us across the board on so many levels. And that is our abhinivesha, that is our dwelling in that life, that style of life, that mode of life. And this is the fifth and last klesha. The fifth and last klesha. But they're all still connected. Because when we have the ignorance of the self, and then when we turn to the ego-ness of separating ourselves from the bigger picture, or ignoring our dharma, or when karma needs to be done, the action needs to be done, and we don't do it, that could be asmita too. That somehow we think the part is bigger than the whole. That's that kind of thinking. When something needs to be done and we don't do it, that is the part thinking it's bigger than the whole. And that's asmita. And then from there, we get the extreme obsession, repulsion, and then settled into a way of life that if things go wonky, we don't know how to deal with it. But as we know, and this also comes up in the Yoga Sutras, it's parinama. Parinama. Everything is evolving, changing, moving. We can do two things. We can deny that, cross our arms, say nope. Or we can realize that. And so this is what yoga is asking in the sutras here. It's to acknowledge, it is to identify our kleshas, identify them so that we don't identify with them. And that's really where it comes down to. Is if we first identify what our main obstacles are, what are we overly attached to, what are we overly averse to, What are we dwelling in too much that's paralyzing us in life so that we don't live? Those are all stemming from avidya, ignorance of the self. And so that when we start going into, and again, we've been hearing a lot of that go within, but this is what it's asking. It's like, okay, what does that mean again, going within? It's this question. What are my kleshas? What are my kleshas? And this is a time for that reevaluation because it's not really as important. It is important. Trust me, it's important. It's not necessarily important what we're doing during this. Okay, let that sink in for a moment. I know that could be like, what? Not what we're doing during. It's what we do after. Because this will end. And there will be a different world. But it's what we do afterwards. That's the big one. And that's where these kleshas come in. Because if we identify the kleshas during this period of going within, during this period of self-isolation, if we then identify them and we make a little list and we write them down, but nothing changes afterwards, so we empty our bucket of all these kleshas. That's literally what we're looking at, is to empty the bucket, toss out all those kleshas that aren't helping us. Then we've got this empty bucket. And we look into that empty bucket and go, I don't like empty buckets. I'm going to start filling it back up. But I'm just going to keep filling it back up with the same old shit. No, that's not what we're doing. When you empty the trash, you empty the trash and get rid of the trash. You don't put more trash into it. In fact, you can get rid of the wastebasket so you don't even accumulate the trash anymore. And the kleshas then could be that trash. And so if we get rid of them, then we can get rid of the trash can. That just, because humans, what we like to do, I know this is a big generalization, but guess what? We do. If there's space, we like to fill it. And so when we create space, the next question is always like, what do I fill it with? And that's the big question, because when this space has been opened up, not by our choice, we didn't choose this. I didn't choose not to be going to New Mexico. Well, there was an element of choice, of responsibility to others. But the conditions I didn't choose for. That space was created. And again, it's what we do to fill that space. And so that's where we are with the next level of abhinivesha, the last one. Again, back to that dwelling. So when we've cleared the land, and we're going to build a new dwelling, how are we going to rebuild that? What are we going to rebuild it with? Because after the destruction, there's rebuilding. And back to the Katha Upanishad, when Yama says to Nakichita, it's the Prabhava and Apyaya, it's the Alpha and the Omega, it's the beginning and the end, yoga that is. That's literally Prabhava is the creation, the origin, the beginning, the becoming. And Apyaya is the destruction. It's the vanishing. It's the unbecoming. Now, why is that important for yoga again is, well, who is considered the Natarajasana? Nataraja. The Lord of the dance is Shiva, and Shiva, Om Namah Shivaya, or this for a reason. There's our little dancing Shiva. What is he dancing about? He's dancing about the creation and destruction of the universe. Because there are periods of destruction, and from that comes creation. What do we fill that space with? But what is he dancing on? There's usually a little dwarf here, a little guy down here, and it's actually a demon. It's a little demon. That demon's usually named avidya. There's a few names for him, but avidya, ignorance. Because Shiva is stamping out, hello, arg, arg, say it, arg, arg, arg. I know I probably said something stupid. Okay, fine. Grow up, please. Cowardly. And so, avidya is stamping out that ignorance by the destruction of the Kleshas. That's stamping out the ignorance. Literally is what the metaphor is here. Okay, so, again, what do we do? What do we do? It's to identify the Kleshas. We look at them. And we really look at them. That's where the meditation. Because Patanjali then says, how do we get rid of the Kleshas? It's through dhyana. And dhyana we talked a little bit last time. But dhyana, just to remind us, is that ekagrata, that singularity of meditation. But what is that ekagrata? What is that one thing that we're really grasping on? It is the question of who is this person right here? Who's this person? And that is what the dhyana is. And then it's not just who is this person, but who is this person in relationship to the bigger picture to get rid of the asmita. That's how we get rid of the asmita. Well, in Advaita Vedanta, which yoga can be read as that or Samkhya, there's two different ways to read, dualist or non-dualist. That's a whole nother yoga talk. Says, well, that question doesn't even need to be asked because the self and the bigger picture are never separate. The ignorance is going, I'm different from everything else. So that's one way to get rid of the avidya of asmita. Then raga, the strong obsession, how do we deal with that one? Is, well, maybe by choice or not, certain things that we were passionate about have been taken away from us. Maybe temporarily or not, permanently, some. And then we have that opportunity to look, okay, what was it that caused that intense raga? Similarly, with dvesha, we're having to face some of these confrontations of things we don't like. And again, this is an opportunity for that dhyana, for that focus, that ekagrata then could be on something that I don't necessarily like. But why? Because just saying, I don't like it, doesn't really do anything for us. The avidya is still there. Because the next time, I still don't like Brussels sprouts. So, I still have avidya there. But why don't I like them? Now, I do have a story for that, but that's for another time. But why do I not like certain things? Then we can go into, that can be our meditation, that can be our dhyana, that can be our focus, so that we then examine ourselves about how to deal with it. And then finally, as I said, when we have cleared that field, kshetra is the field, that's the avidya. When we have cleared the field, what are we going to plant? That's bija. Bija are the seeds. So what are we going to plant in this field? What do we want to grow from this? That's really the big question. So when I mentioned earlier, okay, it's important what we do during this, but let's ask the question, okay, what are we going to do after this? What seeds can we plant now that we don't know how they're going to grow, but we can plant certain seeds for that experience? But if our klesha field, the kshetra of the kleshas, the field of ignorance, is full of weeds and all kinds of rubbish, and it's just a junkyard, nothing's going to grow. So, then, this is our chance to empty the trash. Empty the trash. And then, secondly, what do we want to put back into it? How do we want to integrate that process? That is the samadhi. Samadhi means to put together, to synthesize, to integrate the process of confronting the kleshas. And it's not fun. It's not easy. These are not easy times. We know that. Not painting some kind of rosy picture. I'm also not doom and gloom at all, because from this clearing of the field, new growth, new life comes. New life, new growth. So this is where we're at. We're at the point of clearing the field. Identifying those things that may be holding us back. And the kleshas is usually translated as the obstacles, but it can also be things that afflict us or cause some sort of pain. And we don't like the pain, because the pain, again, is that dukkha. Dukkha. This is our suffering, and we're looking for the moksha. Okay, the moksha is a release from that through our yoga practice. The moksha comes from really learning about the self. So, big stuff. Now, how do we do that? Then Patanjali gives us Ashtanga, the Eightfold Path. And we can talk about that more, maybe in another yoga talk. What do you think? But in short, don't just want to leave you hanging with that, is that there is an answer. There is a method, an upaya. Upaya is a method or skill. Upaya is a method that we need, and the Yoga Sutras does provide that. Now, there are other methods. Ooh, got another one of those. Arrgh, arrgh. I really hope you're making that sound. I really do. Really do. Because it'll make you feel better. Just give a good pirate's arrgh. So there is this method. The upaya is the Ashtanga. And that is, just briefly, yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana. Somebody's really, really angry at me. And then samadhi. Yamas. Yamas and niyamas, things we can do every day. Basically, they all come down to treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. It's the golden rule. It's the common sense. The sensus communis. Common sense. Yamas and niyamas. Going back to your asana and pranayama. That prepares you for the dharana, dhyana, samadhi, the samyama, the bringing together of the mind, focusing in. Once we've cleared the trash of the kleshas, then we can integrate it into our lives. All right, I'm just going to take a quick look to see if we got any questions. Hello. Could Abhinivesha be good in those difficult times? Yes, it could. Good question. Thank you. Could Abhinivesha be good? Yes, it can. Yes. So, Abhinivesha, again, is this dwelling in this type of life. Absolutely. I'm sitting in an Abhinivesha, and I'm really happy I have this. So, yes, to wholesale get rid of the Abhinivesha, that's definitely not good. So thank you for that question, Kali. Yes, Abhinivesha, it's when it overtakes everything else, and it paralyzes you. But otherwise, we do need dwelling. We are dwelling people. We need dwelling places. And so yes, absolutely, Abhinivesha is a place to dwell during these times of the svadhyaya, the self-study. Excellent. Thank you very much. And let's see. Okay. All right. Good. Okay, so if you have any questions, we're going to start wrapping it up quickly. Just to review, samavati, synthesis, samadhi, bringing it all together. The reality is there are obstacles in life. Some of them are self-generated, vrittis, the mind. Some of them are antaraya, some of them are external, some are things that we have no control over. And then there are the kleshas, which are the big obstacles. And those can be dealt with through this process of self-discovery, self-observation. And then from there, and this is just ending on a very positive, because I think there is santosha, you can see there's an N or an M, because whenever I say santosha, people are like, oh, but I've seen it santosha. Well, it's neither. In Sanskrit, there's 6 different types of M's and N's. It's samdosha. So if you see with a S-A-N or S-A-M, samdosha. Samdosha, tushati means happy or pleasing. It pleases me. Santosha then is with that happiness. And that's one of the niyamas, santosha. And really what santosha is during this process of clearing the ground, looking at what we have, and then being at peace with that. And if we're not at peace with that, there's 2 options. We ask the question, why are we not at peace with that? And that's and we go back to the drawing board, and we go back to the svadhyaya. Or we realize what is wrong, and then we clear the trash, empty the trash, and then get rid of the trash can so we don't fill it back up. All right. So it's been really nice to see some people over here on the sides. And don't worry, I know Jasper's worried about the pirates. Pirates are fine. We need pirates to remind us, to keep us honest. Thank you. So thank you to all of you, pirates included. And as we finished last time, I do want to bring up a mantra that many people know, and I think it's speaking to a lot of people right now. So I'll repeat it again. It's loka. So loka is the worlds. So it's a plural for worlds, many worlds, all the worlds, however many worlds there are. Loka, samasta. Samasta is to bring together, to harmonize. Sukhino means to be possessing happiness. So loka, samasta, sukhino. And then bhavantu is the 3rd person plural of let it be. Let it be. So let them be. Let. Loka samasta sukhino. Let all of the worlds possess happiness. And that's challenging, but when we remember that the part is not bigger than the whole, I think we're on the right marga there, the right path. So again, thank you very much for being here, and I hope to see you again soon. This has been Robert Fulton, and thank you for joining us today with our Antwerp Yoga Talk. Thank you, and namaste. Respect to you.